And when I think about certain of just the truisms that we take, that we accept that certain things are better than others, that knowledge is better than ignorance, that clarity is better than confusion, that compassion is better than cruelty, that flourishing is better than suffering, that beauty is better than ugliness. These are just like truisms.
We agree. Those are truisms. They are the fundamental elements of what makes us human. They are the connective tissues between our overwhelming modern life and our deepest genetic selves.
Yeah, truisms. These are the things that we don't question because they're pretty much universally agreed upon. Like, these are the things that we just know, not because we just believe in them, but because they articulate a broad coalition of facts about our humanity. That's what truisms are.
Yeah, so they're not just these obvious ideas or preferences that we express, right? I think that is really key. That's like, they're not just like knowledge over ignorance or compassion over cruelty, right? They're clues. They're clues to something deeper. Welcome to Behavioral Grooves. I'm Kurt Nelson.
And I'm Tim Houlihan. And today we're joined by philosopher and author Rebecca Newberger Goldstein, who takes us on a journey into what she calls the mattering instinct.
It's this idea that at our core, we are creatures of matter who long to matter, and that longing is powerful. And it's not just a nice philosophical idea. It's a driving force behind much of what we do in our everyday actions, activities, all of that kind of stuff. And we have seen this come up with other contemporary authors, such as Zach Mercurio in episode 484, back from June of 2025.
Yeah, we also talked about it with researchers such as Ari Kuglansky in episode 372 from September of 2023. Now, Ari's research described the psychological effects of the need to strive, the need to matter, no matter what your culture that you live in. It's really a central component of our goals and our relationships and our ambitions, even our conflicts. They can be understood in what Rebecca calls mattering projects. And these projects are ways that we try to justify ourselves in our own eyes.
And here is where at least I think it gets really interesting. It's the one kind of big groove idea that I think we want you to take away from this conversation today, is that not all mattering projects are created equal. Not all of them. Some help you create clarity, they give you compassion, they help you flourish. The things that we heard in that opening quote.
Absolutely. And the others, well, there are mattering projects that can create confusion and cruelty or even destruction. And this is why Rebecca brings in this surprising connection to physics in our discussion, entropy. And this is the idea that everything naturally drifts towards disorder unless we actively push back and try to maintain order.
Yeah. Listeners, it'll be fascinating to get your take on the physics of this. It was cool. I thought that was cool. So the question actually becomes, are our lives devolving into disorder, or are we actively and purposely creating something more ordered, more meaningful? And that's what we explore in this conversation. What does it mean to matter? How do we choose our mattering projects, and how those choices then shape not just our lives, but the entire world around us?
So we hope that you'll sit back and relax with a generous cup of mattering tea.
Ooh, that sounds
and enjoy
good.
Our conversation with Rebecca Newberger Goldstein. Rebecca Newberger Goldstein, welcome to Behavioral Grooves.
It's a pleasure to be here.
We're excited to talk to you about your new book. And let's start with a speed round, because that's what we do. It's infamous here on Behavioral Grooves. So first question, would you prefer to have dinner with your favorite musician or your favorite actor?
Oh, musician.
You have just endeared yourself to Tim.
I'm there.
That.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure Tim will have some questions about that later on. Okay, Rebecca, second of our speed round questions. Are you a coffee drinker or a tea drinker?
I am a coffee drinker.
Yes. Yes. All right. Tim is not. I am. So we have a competition going, and I am winning so far. Are you a coffee connoisseur, or does it any kind of coffee, or does it have to be a very special
I
type?
like dark roast.
Dark roast. Okay.
Sounds pretty specific. Like you're not dancing around this. You've got your preferences, right?
I do.
Fair enough.
I do.
Okay, third speed round question. We're getting a little deeper into it now. Is the second law of thermodynamics just a law about physics, or can it be applied to other realms like psychology?
It is so far-reaching. It is the supreme law of physics, never to be falsified. And
for those who don't know, the second law of thermodynamics is?
It says that all physical systems are sliding from the order they need to maintain what they do to disorder. And even the universe itself will end in heat death.
Entropy, right? There you go.
There it is.
Entropy.
Yeah. Excellent.
Entropy, which means literally the physicist who coined the phrase, Rudolf Clausius, it literally means transformation from within. And what we are systems who are constantly fighting that transformation from within. Yeah.
We're going to talk about that as we get into this, but we're still in the speed round. So, our speed? No, our speed rounds are never speedy. Just to let you know that, Rebecca. We call it this. It's a misnomer by whatever means. All right, the last of our questions. Can our life be thought of as one big, long, mattering project?
We change our mattering projects over life.
Okay.
Yeah. And we are definitely going to come back to that. We are definitely going to talk about how mattering projects change and why they might change. Yeah. But we are talking to Rebecca about her book, The Mattering Instinct. And I've just got to start with, what is mattering? Is that like meaning? But help our listeners understand what is mattering.
I think it's more basic than meaning. I think meaning is an ancillary term. I define it in terms of mattering. Mattering, and we talk about what matters, we talk about who matters. And in all these cases, what we're saying is deserving of attention. And so those are two very interesting words, deserving and attention.
Kind of loaded. Yeah.
They're both really loaded. Yeah. And we, I think, are creatures of matter who long to matter. And so, yes, I think that captures what we are.
Yes. So, and is it mattering about self, or is it about mattering to ourselves, mattering to others?
Yeah. I would say, so basically what it means is deserving of attention. And deserving is, to me, as a philosopher, as a trained philosopher, a particularly interesting word because it's what philosophers call a normative term. It doesn't, it entails ought. It's not just about is, but ought. And so what I call the mattering instinct, or the longing to matter, really involves our relationship with ourselves. There is mattering to others, but this is more fundamental and existential. It really is this kind of existential dimension to being human that makes being human so complicated and difficult.
and maybe so wonderful too, right?
And so wonderful, yes. But truly complicated. That we take on, so we already spoke a little bit about entropy, and all living things are battling entropy. They're taking in energy and have to take in energy. We're not closed systems. And that energy is put to work to resist entropy for as long as we can. Entropy always wins in the end, You're going to die. Yes. But what we have, we humans, is, so we're doing this just just like all things. And all creatures that have evolved the adaptation of attention are basically putting attention to work in self-mattering, to examine, get information from their environment, take in what they need, avoid what will hinder their basic project, which is to survive long enough to pass on their genes to the next generation. We now know.
Yeah.
But we humans, with our incredibly complicated brains, the most complicated objects yet discovered in the universe, have the capacity, we call it self-reflection, to step outside of ourselves, to look at all the attention we have to devote to ourselves. And when we're in the default network mode, when we're not paying attention to the environment, we're not being stimulated by that. What are we doing? We're fantasizing. We're mind wandering about ourselves. This is where it always comes back to ourselves. But we can look at that and say, do I really deserve all this attention that I have to give myself in order to pursue my life? We have those moments where we can step outside. I think we all do it. Some of us do it repeatedly. Some of us do it in adolescence and say, well, this is how I'm going to justify myself. But it makes us, I've used that word justify, it makes us justificatory. I'm glad I got that word.
Well done, yes.
Justificatory creatures and value-seeking creatures. So it makes us already, just this deserving of attention, to ask it of yourself, already kicks us up into a realm of great complexity and confusion and uncertainty.
There is you have a great little image in the book that just kind of talks about this idea of the component of that. I love that whole part, and I think there's an interesting piece that you're bringing up here, and you talk about this in the book. You suggest that the instinct of mattering is both deeply human and yet deeply divisive as well, and so. How is something that is so universal, as you said, we've evolved to have this sense of any kind of creature that has that sense of being out there. It's universal from that point. How does it lead to such conflict in that manner?
Yeah, it's the scientific story that I tell, which is so important to me. I'm not making this up. I'm not just philosophizing. It's really, and I started in physics, so
Well, that's your background. That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
So, it brings us to this point, of I can explain how we came to be these creatures who want to justify ourselves in our own eyes, and that's what we mean. That. Meaning a meaningful life, that we can somehow justify ourselves in our own lives. So I can tell you, the scientific story up to then, but the laws of nature have made us these creatures who want to know, I don't want to waste my life. I don't want to waste my short time here on Earth. How do I live a life that matters? Which is the fundamental, I call the mother question of all mattering questions. But it hasn't prepared us, these great brains of ours, to answer that question. Because it's a question about values, about justification. And so it throws us up into something very complicated and I think very estimable. I think there's a dignity to that, which I keep reminding myself of during these hard times of such division and, whatever side we're on and the way we've divided ourselves up into sides, many ways we've divided ourselves into sides. It's really important for me always to go through this, as I'm reading the morning paper. Oh, I understand why these people are acting this way. It's coming from this deep existential longing that I share with them. I see the humanity in them.
Yeah.
And it's hard to be human. So how does it do it? Well, basically, we've been kicked up into this realm of values without knowing how to navigate ourselves within it, and it's and it's hard. And so I do feel that, but we stake our lives on this. If we don't find a way I call, a kind of mattering project. If we don't find a mattering project to kick us into our future, to give us the strength to resist entropy, we fall into depression. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Yeah, that is, in fact, the U.S. hotline for suicide prevention is www.youmatter.com. I've spent a lot of time talking to people in deep clinical depression. What they say is, I don't matter. Others do. I don't. I never will. And they could be people of tremendous talent. In fact, I go into the story of William James, the great philosopher, psychologist, who was paralyzed in his early adulthood by depression. Could not get out of bed. It's almost a death within death, this kind of depression, and constantly thinking of thoughts of suicide. Except he had too many talents. He didn't even know where to put it. He couldn't focus on what I call a mattering project. And so, we need this in order to get on with life. And we have to make a leap into it. Well, this is what will be of value. And we're staking our lives on this. This is what's of value for me, knowledge, understanding, for other people, other things, many, many different things.
It reminds me, we had Ari Krugansky on. I don't know if you're familiar with him, a psychologist, right? And he's written a lot about this quest for significance, striving for significance as kind of the underlying motivator from a motivational perspective for most of our actions. And he's done that. And it's really interesting because his work was about people who have been radicalized. So again, what you were talking about, like he's like going, what they're finding is the sense of significance in what they're doing. And to your point, I think you were talking like you see the humanity in them, even if they're on the opposite side of whatever political or divisiveness that you have. There's a part where you can understand. If you can understand that, you can see that human part of them.
You can see it. You can sympathize, and often you can understand. Well, what went wrong? That these extreme. So I read through all the manifestos left behind by these random murderer, acts of random violence. Often young people. Mm-hmm. It is all, I am a nobody. The Parkland, Florida suicide. Yeah. Well, he wasn't a suicide. He murderer.
Yeah. Right. Mass murder.
Mass murder. I am nobody. Tune in. You will know my name. You will, and the Santa Barbara guy that manifests, that they feel like nothing, insignificant. Something has gone so terribly wrong. One of the people I profiled, because theory is theory, but no, you have to show how this really plays out in life, in stories. But one of the people who I profiled he's an ex neo-Nazi skinhead. I really wanted to talk to a racist, right? But, surprise, surprise, all of them. So I was on Reddit, reading all their stuff. Surprise, surprise. I would get in touch with them. None of them wanted to talk to Rebecca Goldstein. Right? So none of the neo-Nazis were interested in talking to me. So, but he was, because he is an neo-Nazi skinhead. He had a tattoo of Goebbels on his chest, all his knuckles.
Wow.
His knuckles spelled out skinhead, so that when he would beat people up, and he did terrible things. He did, and he will tell you he did terrible things. But when he beat people up, they would know why they were being beaten up, people of color and such. Mm. And of course, the Jews were all behind it. And it was all about what had gone so terribly wrong in his early life, terrible early life, a violent early life, in which he felt, yes, that he didn't matter at all. He's really smart guy, and charismatic, good looking. I mean, he had a lot going, but his family life was terrible, and school, given how terrible his family life, that was terrible. And he was walking home from school as a kid trying to get hit by a car. Comes in contact with some neo-Nazi skinheads, and they say, "You matter." They use that language. You matter. You look in the mirror. You are a white, male, heterosexual American. You matter more than all these other people who are stealing your mattering away from you. So this kind of zero-sum notion of mattering, very powerful when you've had the kind of background that he has.
So that became his Mattering project.
It did.
Right? This is, and because you brought up this term about the Mattering project, but it changed. At some point, he left that Mattering project and went on to another one, right?
Yeah. I mean, his story is extraordinary.
Yeah. So this is one of the things that is so interesting about the complexity of the human condition that you write about, is that some people arc one Mattering project across their whole life, but others might have multiples. What separates those two in this sea of longing?
Various things. I too, I was born into a very religious family. Saw my mattering in terms of that. That's what it is to be a truly, I call such people transcenders. It's the notion of a higher power, whether you call it God or something more spiritual and vague, but the mattering is out there in the universe, and you were created to serve it, and that's how you see your life. And that has a great effect on one's sense of mattering. And I took a little nibble from, I remember this very well, Hostess cream cake, or Twinkies, Hostess Twinkies. It looks so delicious, And so I did, as a little girl, and I was at a friend's house, and I took a little nibble, and I felt the Lord of the Hosts was watching me eat this Hostess Twinkie, which
and it was wrong.
It was wrong, and I can't begin to tell you how scared I felt and how much penance I did. I was extremely nice to my little sister, who I often was not nice to.
I'm sorry. We shouldn't laugh about being mean to the little sister, but we all get that.
Being nice for having a nibble of a Twinkie. That I think is great.
How much I mattered, that God himself, the creator of the universe, was watching and was not approving of little Rebecca,
Oh my gosh.
So that's but I came not to be a believer, and I radically changed my whole sense of what my purpose is, what my mattering project is. So I know what that feels like and how difficult that is. It's hard to be an immigrant on the geographical map. You should have great empathy for people who have to do that. It's extremely hard to be an immigrant on what I call the mattering map, to change your region of that. It's very, very difficult. So I came out of it, and as my ex neo-Nazi friend came out of it, by seeing, to me, it seemed wrong. I couldn't believe in it anymore. And that's he too. He could not believe in it anymore because when he was put in the slammer at the age of 17 as a felon, his best buddies were two black guys. And then when he came out, and nobody would employ an 8th grade dropout with a great big swastika on the side of his neck, except for this Jewish guy who told him that he was smart and that he mattered, he had to give up his last hatred. And it was really, really hard for him. When he came out of prison, he was no longer anti-black, but he still hated the Jews. And then, I'm not going to say how the story ends, because it is such
no.
People should read it.
Go buy the book. It's a really amazing story, and I talked to people. It was 40 years ago that I started thinking about this mattering and came up with the idea of the mattering map. And I just been talking to people ever since because it's the best conversation starters. What is your Mattering project? When you explain what you mean by this, people understand it, which tells me, that we're all deep down, we're thinking about this. We're thinking about it.
And I just have to say, Gert, you've got a great question coming up, I'm sure. But I just have to say, Rebecca, I am going to be using this as a conversation starter because I so dig the whole philosophical side.
Yeah.
Kurt is not going to be using this as
that is not that is that's a little big of an overstatement there, Tim. But
one of my favorite stories was I was waiting for a friend in the lobby of a Manhattan hotel. Guy comes up. This was years and years ago. Guy comes up and he's pestering me. He's trying to pick me up. So I start talking to him about Mattering and his Mattering project. And it turns out this was his Mattering project. He picked up women. He was a pickup artist.
Oh,
was his Mattering project.
That's an interesting Mattering project.
Yeah, it was so. He had his statistics. He had his heroes. He told me the books to read about it, and there are books about it, how to pick up women, and and the Mattering project is very, very complicated. The amount of creativity that our species has lavished on this longing to matter is astounding. The creativity is amazing. Good ones and bad ones. And, and one of the things I try to do is come up with some kind of criteria to judge what are the good ones or what are the bad ones.
Hey Groovers, we want to take a moment away from our conversation to thank you for listening to Behavioral Grooves. If you enjoy the conversations we're having and want to help us keep the groove going, here are a few simple ways that you can support the show.
First off, subscribing to our Substack is a great way to stay connected with us between episodes. The weekly newsletter provides you with cool insights that are beyond the episodes, and they get delivered straight to your inbox.
And if you haven't already, leaving a review or a rating of the podcast on a platform like Apple or Spotify or YouTube helps other curious minds discover us. And there's two great things about that. One, it gives us a boost, and two, it costs nothing.
And it only takes a second, but it makes a huge difference for us. Plus, we love hearing from you, so don't be shy. Leave us a review or give us a quick thumbs up.
We're coming up on 500 episodes, and we're doing this because we love the conversations we have with our guests.
Yeah, we also want to do it because we love bringing you insightful, behavior-changing content every week, and we hope that some of those insights will help you find your groove.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned this Mattering map, and so at the you in the book at the very beginning you have a visual of 4 islands of this Mattering map, and you talk about the different types of people. Do you want to explain to our listeners just a little bit, kind of define that, and then we can get into maybe a little bit of the different islands that you have, and
yes,
again, good and bad of those. Yeah.
Yeah. So I said that Mattering map is so complicated, so many regions, the stories I've heard, amazing. But I began to think, in the scientific way, are there some patterns here? Are there general strategies that are being used? And it seemed to me that there were 4. I've been constantly testing this, and it's an empirical hypothesis open to falsification. So here's what I've come up with. So the first are the transcenders, what I call the transcenders. I already spoke a little bit about that. And that is, the Mattering is, there's a trans-empirical being who created the universe and the laws of nature without, and the moral order within. And our Mattering project is to figure out what that transcendent being has for us, what our purpose is, and to serve it. And this is as I mentioned, this is a very, very strong. It itself can be, I don't have to tell anybody, very divisive, because we've come up with very different ideas of what that being wants, right? The religious wars that have taken place and that continue to take place, and the certainty with which people avow this is what it is to matter. And without this, people don't matter. Maybe they're even less than human. So it can be very, very powerful. But it delivers, and I can attest to this personally, such a strong sense of mattering, a kind of cosmic mattering that little you have a role to play in the narrative of eternity, or you wouldn't be here. It doesn't get any big, short of lunacy, I should say. It doesn't get any bigger than that, short of thinking that you are somehow God or whatever. This is so it's big. And it's no surprise that it has the, it's the tenacity, the stickiness, and as I say, for everything there are creative ways of realizing the strategy, and destructive ways, and that is true for transcenders as for anybody else. I'm not putting down transcenders. Most of the people I've spoken to, when I say mattering, they immediately complete my phrase by mattering to others. Mattering means mattering to others, and we all need to matter to others. We do. We're a gregarious species, evolved from gregarious species, and that's what it means to be a gregarious. And we have to have others in our lives to whom we matter, whether we deserve it or not. I call those people my friends, my husband, my family, hopefully my colleagues, but it is socializers. There are two different kinds that I've distinguished. Some socializers, I call them intimate socializers. Those people who they need to have in their lives by reason of being a gregarious creature. Those are the people to whom they need to matter for their mattering instinct to be satisfied. So many mothers that I spoke to, it's all about their children, raising their children to be flourishing. So I've spoken to romantics. It's the love, the great passion, the great love affair. Often they're serial romantics. Keep going from one to the next, but because it's hard to maintain that.
Right. Mm-hmm. It's not enough. One isn't enough.
Yes.
It's the pickup artist. There you go. Yeah.
There you go. But then I'm very, very interested in, and they're socializers too, those who try to convince themselves, and it's always convincing yourself that you matter. It's always, that's the person you're trying to convince yourself. But it could be by means of your relationship with others. But there are those who are trying to convince themselves that their mattering projects involve mattering to a bunch of strangers. What do we call that? Fame. That's what it is to be famous, right? You matter to a bunch of strangers, that they are paying you tons of attention, what you have for breakfast, whether you have 6 toes. I mean, just every crazy thing. And if they are paying I well understand it, that why that would answer to one's mattering instinct. If they find you so deserving of attention, surely you are deserving of attention. Surely
which is why we started the podcast, just, because we knew there'd be instant fame. Yeah.
Yes.
and buckets
it
of
didn't
wealth
really work out like we wanted, but it was still
our mattering project.
It didn't work out well for me.
No.
Yeah. So, and for some people, it really does work out well. So one of my favorite stories was, I read about it, I didn't speak to him, the actor Kevin Bacon, and he was getting sick of being swamped by strangers coming over all the time. So he put on a prosthetic nose and eyeglasses and a wig, and he went to a mall in LA. And then he was being interviewed. I think it was
and he wasn't picked out. I mean, just for this,
he walked. He was able to walk.
No one recognized him.
He had to wait in line. He had to,
Yeah. He said, nobody came over to say how much they loved me. I had to wait online for a fucking cup of coffee. It was terrible.
Right.
Awful. Off came the prosthetic nose. So for some people, it works. But for many people, it doesn't. It because it's very unstable. The public is very unstable, and
Right.
and who was the guy who was just? I mean, yeah, no, they often end in a bad way. Drug addiction, all this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Who was it? The guy from Friends who, terrible.
Matthew Perry.
Matthew Perry.
Yeah. I mean, there are lots of stories of this. You were high on fame and then you need it and it's gone. And so, but for some people it works, so we're so different. The diversity here is amazing. Okay. So these various kinds of socializers, there are different kinds. Cults are also when they're mattering to a cult leader. But then there are heroic strivers, and heroic strivers, it's really not mattering to others. That's not the game, really. It's not mattering to God. It's not mattering to other people. They have certain standards of excellence in mind. It could be intellectual, artistic, athletic, ethical. And they need to come closer to these standards or make progress, with these.
These are really, really high standards that they're striving for.
It can be. I know heroic strivers who, I just want to finish the marathon. I don't want to be the last one.
Yeah.
Right. And this is their mattering project. But what I have found is the higher the talent, the higher the standards. You have to be reaching. And so for those of a very high talent and passion, it's reaching very, very high. And but no, there are those, I want to perfect the art of French cooking. It's I don't have to be the innovator. I just want to perfect this. And it's a kind of aesthetic, or I'm raising a beautiful garden. It can be small, it can be big. Heroic strivers. When the talent is great, then we tend to know of these people. But that's not, so they might reach fame. But that's not the end game.
Right.
And then there are the competitors, and they're the ones I least understand. I had to read a tremendous amount on the psychology of competitors, because and then I took some tests, and I seem not to be at all competitive. In fact, competition makes me want to curl up and die, actually. It takes all the joy out of my mattering project, actually. So, but they are the people who think of mattering in zero-sum terms. To the extent that others matter, they're taking something away. And so it could be individual, and it may be just in their field, in their sphere.
So, just to clarify, it's about me mattering, you mattering less than me, right? That's the competitive nature, right?
If you matter as much, or God forbid, more, it hurts. It hurts. It's a pain, And the neo-Nazi that I spoke about before, it wasn't on an individual level. There, it was on a group level. My group matters more, to the extent, and you could see, there are many studies about this, that, for example, racist jokes went up when the Obamas were occupying the White House, that this kind of, to see people who you thought you could look down on, now raised to such a level, had a very bad effect on certain segments of the society who really base their mattering on belonging to a superior group. And it's not just, so this can lead to racism, sexism, classism, also elitism. I have met scientists who, when you probe them, feel, scientists matter more than other people. They really matter.
Yeah.
Philosophers who think philosophers matter more than other people. So it's not just great. It's interesting, that my group matters more. And so, so that's the kind of, those basically are the four strategies that so far, I've been thinking about it for over 40 years, trying always to be open to falsification. I haven't yet found any reason to doubt these four strategies, but I'm open.
I think it's amazing that you started thinking about this when you were 5 years old. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Actually, I want to dig in because you talked about how the racist jokes and other things happened when Obama's came in. And there's something there, I think, that if you peel away some of the layers, when you're looking at that, it was like, I was okay because I could hold this mindset that I am above, and there's no evidence out there at this point that points to that otherwise, at least that I don't have to have it in my face every day, right? I mean, there's lots of evidence around there, but we have a great deal of ability as a human being to kind of look away from things that we don't like and look at things that we do.
Yeah.
And is that, I see that happening even more. So all of a sudden now I have to become more engaged in this, and I need to feel like that instinct is to go out and make sure that I am putting those people in their right place and in that manner. Am I getting that correct?
Exactly right. That, when the whole mattering scheme has been turned topsy-turvy and it's wrong, right?
Yeah.
That can become your mattering project, to put it right. That's what happened, with my friend, the neo-Nazi, these people, I feel terrible because these people are making me feel terrible. And I have to put it to right. And he is such a smart guy. He became such a brilliant organizer. And he had a radio show. He's really creative, right? But that became his mattering project. And that finally he felt like he mattered.
Yeah.
So yes. And I have, I did a lot of reading about incels. I got on their Reddit in the sense of not mattering as it's profound. They feel, and these women, don't they realize that they are supposed to love me and be available to me, and that I am the man, this whole,
it matters to them. That's their mattering.
That matters to them. I don't know. Yeah. There's this wonderful new documentary, Inside the Manosphere. I recommend very much. Just came out. And this guy, he is interviewing, these influencers, who are really making money off of other people's feeling that they don't matter. He knows how to reach them. There are certain demagogues who know how to reach them. This is, if you know how to reach the people who are aching, who are existentially aching, this is a way of either making a lot of money, or becoming famous, or gaining political power. So it's intense. And so if you know how to harness it, yeah.
So we've been talking about mattering in relationship to the human condition, to the human species, to Homo sapiens.
Yeah.
Do you think AI will ever matter?
Yeah. I certainly hope not. I mean, it matters.
It matters that it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But AI itself, yeah.
AI mattering to itself. If AI starts asking, well, I pay all this attention to myself. Do I really deserve it? Then what we will have are non-carbon-based, silicon-based humans. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that is
wow.
Who will have rights, obligations, and our whole ethics. We'll have to expand to take them in. They are. I'm thinking so much about AI now. Who isn't? Right? It's. I think I froze. If I froze.
We can hear you. So
you can hear me. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's and I use it. It's very, very intelligent. It's definitely intelligent. AI, for how we define intelligence, AI is intelligent, but it is, still we're setting the goals. We ask the questions. It, this word agency and agent and agentic is being used very much in Silicon Valley. I think it's a marketing ploy. But it's, they're not really agents. The goals are ours. They're not setting their own goals. But if, we allow it to develop, if it can even be done, I have my doubts about it, but if we could develop it to such an extent that we are completely beside the point, we are dispensable. and it's, we're just put out to pasture to amuse ourselves, this will be terrible for us. So we should stop it before it happens. We should not allow this to happen.
Oh, there's so many movies that kind of point this way that I don't understand why we're not like following what the science writers have written in books and different pieces.
We don't have to go where the technology can take us.
Right.
We don't have
choose.
to do it.
Well, and this is I'm sorry to interrupt.
No.
You had written before about reversible and irreversible components. The billiard ball, which if you viewed a billiard ball hitting another one, if you reverse that film, it would make perfect sense. But an egg dropping and smashing on the ground, if you saw that film reversed and going up, that doesn't, the splattering going back to our entropy and the second one. Yeah. But I think there's something there that once that genie is out of the bottle, it is an irreversible component to a certain degree at that point. That was just a commentary. I apologize on that.
No, you're right. Yes, good.
I do want to ask you, because before we began, one of the things that you talked about before we started recording was like you ended on ethics in the book. And for you, that was very important. Can you tell us a little bit why kind of the arc of the book went and you ended with this ethical component?
Yeah. Well, because I think that this core existential, longing we have to justify ourselves in our own eyes, I think there's something very estimable about it. I think when people talk about the intrinsic dignity of being human, which was always to me too squishy a term, I couldn't get my little analytic mind around it. But now I think this is what it's about, that this is something, it's a real big burden that we take on for ourselves and to try to justify ourselves and to seek the values that will help us justify ourselves in our own minds. I mean, it might be terrible values. It may be, to empower others. If my mattering project is that in order to feel that I matter, I have to invade Poland tomorrow, I must be stopped, right?
Yeah.
So it brings out, I would say, the best and the worst of us, because that's what it is to be human. So what is the best and the worst of us? Can I give some kind of maybe crude criterion to divide it, to do justice to our innate feeling that some ways are very bad, and some ways are good. And there's so many ways to be good, but there are ways for your mattering project to be bad. And again, I start with entropy and how fundamental that is. And I end with entropy with ethics, that all of life is this resistance against entropy. That's what life is. And that's what, it's hard just to stay alive. And entropy is going to get us. But perhaps the best thing to judge our mattering projects is, are we on the side of entropy? Are we hastening disorder, maybe disorder in other people's lives, maybe disorder in the life of the planet as a whole? Are we on the side of entropy? Is there more entropy because of the way we're choosing to live our life? Or is our mattering projects counter-entropic? Is it on the side of order as opposed to disorder? And when I think about certain of just the truisms that we take, that we accept that certain things are better than others, that knowledge is better than ignorance, that clarity is better than confusion, that compassion is better than cruelty, that flourishing is better than suffering, that beauty is better than ugliness. These are just like truisms. And when I think about the things that are better, they require order, So when knowledge is ordered. Ignorance is disordered. Clarity is ordered. Confusion is disordered. That there's a certain sense, and we respond to that because I think we're receptive to that because our whole battle is against entropy to keep this order as long as we possibly can, until entropy gets us at the end. And so in general, this is the maybe crude way I have of trying to capture these ethical distinctions. But I think we can all recognize it, whether we're, whether we're religious or secularist, whether we're scientists or humanists, whether you're, that whether we have very small little mattering projects or very large, I need to change the world. Yeah. And so when I look at certain of the people who are most powerful right now in society, who seem to be gobbling up all the mattering, so there's very little left for the rest of us, the very rich, the very powerful, the very famous, often lodged in the same people, I ask, are you on the side of entropy or are you counter-entropic? Many of them are on the side of entropy. There is more disorder because of the way they're carrying out their lives. And I would say they are not living good lives. They may seem to matter a whole lot. In my eyes, they don't matter. They're doing it all wrong. Yeah. As this, I don't know if you can see the guy behind me. No, I'm blocking it.
No.
It's my statue of Socrates with succulents growing out of his head. I have But when he said the unexamined life is not worth living, what he was saying was, to these very powerful imperious power, Athens was the imperialist power of its day, saying, rethink it, guys. You may be doing it all wrong. And even, we are dominating the world and we are so superior, but you may be doing it all wrong. You may be getting your life all wrong. And I guess I'm just repeating that once again.
That's okay. That we need to hear that message, especially right now in the world. So that we don't end on a bleak note, you do a fantastic job of bringing up great musicians. You talk about Bach and Joan Baez and Christina Aguilera and Glenn Kurtz and Scott Joplin, and you got all these fantastic stories to tell. And I'm not going to give all those away because you should read about them. I want to encourage our readers to actually read about them. But here's the question, Rebecca. If you happen to be stuck on a desert island for a year and you had a listening device that could only take 2 artists on that listening device. Now you get their whole catalog, everything that they've ever recorded, but only 2 artists. Which 2 artists would you choose to take along with you?
Oh God, that's tough. So I could hear everything up there, huh?
Yes.
Everything they've ever worked on. So,
well, the first hit would have to. I think I'm probably going to disappoint you, but it would be Bach.
That's not a disappointment at all. Okay. You're not going to get a disappointment from Johann Sebastian Bach. Holy cow.
Just because there's so much to listen to. There's just so much to hear. The richness is, it's ever coming, and
big catalog, a lot of variety.
A lot of variety. And I mean, and every time I listen, I hear something new, and it pleases my mathematical mind. It sets off many. And I think the other one would be Leonard Cohen.
Oh, I love Leonard Cohen. Yeah.
Yeah. I would need to be in touch with what I feel is the best of humanity. What makes us human, and he gives that to me. He puts me in touch with the deep existential stuff.
In such a beautiful way.
When you think about his lyrics, they're poems. I mean, they are poetry that examines
our lives and how we do it. I mean, even going up to his last album, right, that he, released right before he died, bringing blues in and different, all those components. It was just, I mean, he's an amazing storyteller, poet, and putting that then into music. And the variety of the music, again, is you have a wide variety from kind of, work that he did with Trent Reznor and like, heavier stuff to like some bluesy to, more, acoustic folk. So all over the board.
And you actually brought up what is so important, that there are words there, that there are also words. I mean, Bach is Bach, and yes, the richness is everlasting and ever coming, but the words, combined, the poetry combined with and he was a poet. He set out to be a poet, and he wasn't making it as a poet, and he put the poetry to music, and man, the impact. Close second, Paul Simon and Bob Dylan.
Yeah. But fantastic list, by the way. Yeah. And just for the sake of full disclosure, let's not exclude Bach's oratorios and masses. He's got some words in there.
Yeah, and
what's so
interesting is that he was a transcender. His music was in the service of his God, and I think he always ended with "all to the glory of God." Something like that. That those were always his, except for the last one because he died before he could finish it. But it is, so he was a transcender with a tremendous talent
that arced over his entire career.
Over his entire career. So a good way to end is, one of the things I would like other psychologists, I mean, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not trained to test people, so I would love more information about how we end up where we end up on the mattering method. Why are we transcenders? Why are we heroic strivers, socializers, competitors? Why do we change sometimes over the course of our lives? But what I would like to end on is, no matter what you're drawn to, there are really creative counter-entropic ways of ministering to it. And then there are destructive ways, building more. And so one of my favorite, I have two favorite sayings from ancient sages. One is from my own tradition, the Jewish tradition, Hillel the Elder, 1st century AD sage. He said, if I'm not for myself, then who will be for me? And that's, we have to matter to ourselves. That's our first responsibility, to find a mattering project that serves us. That's our first responsibility. It continues. But if I'm only for myself, then what am I? And if not now, then when? And I think that just captures, I can put it in the terms of entropy. I can turn it into physics, but that statement is complete into itself. And the other one, which also sort of, addresses this last point I want to make, that there are so many ways that we can minister counter-entropically and creatively to this longing. It comes from the Sufi master Rumi. He says, let the beauty you love be what you do. There are hundreds of ways to kneel down and kiss the ground. That one makes me usually tear up and cry. I find it so beautiful.
Leave it to Rumi.
Leave it to Rumi. Yeah.
That lyrical, lovely sense that just like drives a stake through your heart at the same time you're going, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
Rebecca Newberger Goldstein, thank you so much for being a guest today on Behave for Grooves.
Well, thank you, Tim and Kurt. What a pleasure to make contact with you. And I want to keep it forever. It felt really meaningful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
Welcome to our grooving session where Tim and I share ideas on what we learned from our discussion with Rebecca. We have a free-flowing conversation, we hope, and we groove on whatever else comes into Our brains that strive to matter.
Yeah.
I reversed it. I didn't have brains at the end. Did you see that?
I know.
That was a little.
that was mind blowing.
On 500 plus episodes, I don't know if I've ever done that before.
Wow. So you're saying this was the first time?
The first time.
In
people,
more than
you are
500...
listening to a first on Behavioral Grooves. Maybe not. Maybe I've done it multiple times and I just can't remember because my brain is that way these days. Yeah. So what did you think? This was, she's a philosopher and I know you love that.
Bing, 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 bing. Yes. Yeah. Totally love that. Totally love that. And I liked the map idea of sort of charting out this space of saying there's, I mean, if you're going to have a point of view on it, as authors need to have to write the book, you can't just be wishy-washy. You got to create some things, and rather than having pillars or foundational elements or something more structural or corporate, she chose these islands.
You like the Lord of the Rings map.
It is kind of the Lord of the Rings.
It's a fantasy book front page map. There's some coolness about that. Yeah,
yeah. And so I like that, and I like that. I think our discussions with Zach Mercurio and Ari Kuglansky are really tied nicely with talking to Rebecca, and it's something. This whole mattering thing is something that I think we have undervalued.
I agree.
That I haven't thought about it enough in my life until we started having these conversations with Ari and Zach and Rebecca.
Yeah.
And the more that I reflect on it, the more I really believe that mattering is integral to motivation and goal setting and all those kinds of things. And just on a personal basis, I really like it.
So we talk about the map. What island are you on the map?
Oh,
so for people who don't, we talk about this. We talked about this in the episode, right? There, the transcenders, there's the socializers, there's the heroic strivers, and there's the competitors, and each of them have their own island, right? And so
that's right.
You said you've changed islands, and when we talked about this prior to getting on air, you said you've migrated islands over the course of your life.
I've crossed the great sea of faith, and
the strait of faith. Is that the one that
because I used to be a transcender. I was so very deeply identifying myself, and my mattering instincts, my mattering projects evolved and developed from my faith and religious upbringing.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. And I moved away from that to focus more on friends, family, that sort of thing. And at the same time, I kind of straddled the socializer island with the heroic strivers island, which is more about I'm striving to be intellectual and thoughtful and
artistic,
ethical.
like with your music and various different pieces of that.
How about you? What are you a one island guy?
I think I'm mostly. I live on an island and I visit another.
How about that?
Do? Yeah. So I think I'm a heroic striver. I mean, it's the intellectual aspect that is what matters mostly to me, right? That ethical component of let's find out what's truth here. But then I'll travel over and spend some time on the socializers island because, again, friends and family, community are very important. So I don't think there's a piece there that I would not necessarily say, I'm not that.
You don't object to the socializer thing.
No, I don't think I've ever set foot on Transcenders Island though. And I might have maybe once competed, landed on Competitors Island and totally turned around quickly and left. So.
Okay, interesting. So that's I think that answers an interesting question. For me, when I think about the overarching conversation, it matters what you choose to matter about. I thought that was a really great thing that Rebecca points out, that there is a material difference between sort of choosing a more heroic life versus a villainous life. There, right? That you can choose the kind of projects that are going to make you feel like you're mattering and give you the sort of respect and response in the world.
Okay.
And the kind of choices that we make around that are important in not just how we show up, but what the world is going to benefit from.
So will we be the hero or will we be the villain? But
exactly.
Here's my question. Does anybody ever think they're the villain?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Hitler probably didn't think he was a villain.
Right. I mean, there are so much of psychology points to even rapists and murderers who are in prison and have admitted to that. The vast majority of them still consider themselves good people. They rationalize away.
Yes.
That was things that, were outside of my control, and I'm still a good person, where everybody else would be like, no, you're not. You made bad choices and you've done that. And on a much lesser veil of looking at this, everyday people make choices all of the time that others are going, that is not a hero. That is a villain choice.
Yeah.
Where my community might say, no, this is a hero choice. And your community says, no, that's a villain choice.
That's a really interesting perspective. So it does matter what mattering projects you undertake.
Yeah.
However, how they're perceived by others could be different from the way you perceive them.
And this is where the intellectual part of me gets in, going, isn't there an objective truth to some degree? Or is it all subjective? Is there the component? And again, what I'm tiptoeing around the political conversations that we're having in the United States right now, the left versus the right, the megas versus the, more rational, sane people. Sorry, folks, I know we shouldn't get there. But I do think that there is an element of saying, can we, going all the way back to what Rebecca said at the the quote we pulled at the very beginning of this episode.
Yeah.
There are things that we can point to that we can say, yes, we are doing comfort more than harm. We are doing, and I'm misquoting it.
Right. But this lovely dichotomy that she set up, these two parallel paths, one being sort of more virtuous and one less virtuous, they are truths, not because, again, like the way that we said it in the introduction, the way we talked about that, these are truths not because we just believe in them, but it's because we can actually point to these things having actual effects in the world. There are facts that these truths are based on. There are accumulation of lots of facts that become truths. We're not ascribing them as truths because, it just feels good. But there are objective facts that they're built upon.
Yeah. So I'm going to quote here. So we take, that we accept that certain things are better than others, that knowledge is better than ignorance, that clarity is better than confusion, that compassion is better than cruelty, that flourishing is better than suffering, and that beauty is better than ugliness. So can we objectively identify the Mattering Project are we adding to clarity over confusion? Are we adding to compassion more than cruelty? Are we looking at flourishing more than suffering? Are we adding to that in our Mattering Project? Are we bringing beauty into the world versus ugliness? I think that's a key piece as we go through this.
And a challenge might be to loop back to your comment about the way that we think about these things might rely or might change when we use a Jonathan Haidt lens of our moral foundations.
Oh my gosh.
Because the kinds of things that we value in, it's not that everyone can universally agree that compassion is a good thing, but who we have compassion for and how we distribute that compassion might be different depending on your moral foundation.
Expand on that. Expand on some of Jonathan Haidt's work there and those moral foundations, and that, particularly that part. I think there's a key aspect of who are we caring about? And we talked about this actually a little bit in the response to the video that I had out in regards to the ICE,
Alex Preddy's murder
and the ICE kind of response here. But go explain more about Jonathan.
So if we use compassion as a fundamental truth that we believe that all humans universally agree that compassion is better than cruelty.
Yeah.
Then we get into Jonathan Haidt's question about, well, what does that mean? And when you ask that question of more conservative people, they say, well, I need to be compassionate to the people who are in my tribe. I need to be compassionate to my family first. And they take precedence. They rank higher than someone who is not in my family.
Yeah.
And animals are way out even inside the human thing. I'm not even going to be concerned about compassion for animals because I've got all these layers of all these human rings that I would have to go through that are starting with my family. Whereas people who tend to be more on the liberal side want to distribute compassion more evenly, more broadly, and say my next of kin shouldn't matter more. I shouldn't need to be more compassionate with my own children than I am with the person who lives next door or the person who lives in another country.
There's that component of locus of harm. Where do people focus?
Yeah.
So again, from that cruelty, compassion. So in that response to the video that I had posted up, there was a person who talked about, but look at the bringing up examples where immigrants had harmed American citizens or other people.
Yeah.
And brought up a few cases, which there are a few cases.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because as soon as I brought up the harm that was caused to the people that the immigration officers were grabbing and taking, and Alex Preddy, who was murdered, Renee Good, who was murdered, there was, they deserved it. And so that locus of harm was on, again, different others.
Yeah.
And so you could see where that divide happens. And it's very interesting because there's a truth part to each of those.
Yeah.
But it's like you have to accept that there's harm and compassion that needs to be spread across that. So, yeah.
It's a really interesting and complicated aspect. And I agree with Jonathan Haidt when I think the subtitle of his book, The Righteous Mind, where he writes about this, it's a good read. Recommend it for everyone. But I think the subtitle is something along the lines of why smart people can disagree on things.
Yeah.
And it has to do with these moral foundations. And again, it's not that we disagree on compassion or cruelty. It's the way that we stack them up in terms of our general moral foundation.
Yeah. If we look at, there's a set number of moral kind of universals which take precedence for us. And that determines how we view the world and how we show up in the world. And to a certain degree, in our own mattering projects, what we want that mattering to be.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've gone a long way down that rabbit hole.
Oh my God, I just talked philosophical for a bit. That was weird.
You did, Kurt. You did it. Way to go, buddy!
Holy crap! What the hell? Oh my God! All right, what else should we talk about Rebecca's conversation?
I think we've waxed on a long time here, but
you think we have?
To bring it back to mattering?
Yeah, let's bring it back to mattering.
Are we going to pursue the hero's journey or the villain's journey? At least in our own mind. At least from the way that we're thinking about it. Try not to deceive ourselves, and let's try to pick virtuous, mattering projects.
Yeah, so not all mattering projects are equal. Some build order, others accelerate disorder. And again, going back to the entropy piece that Rebecca talked about so much.
Yeah.
Are our actions are the way that we're showing up and making a difference in the world, helping to create order, to build compassion, to, sow love, versus creating disorder in the world?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Groovers, check out our Substack. Check out our Behavioral Grooves community page on Facebook. We'd love for you to join that. Engage us in a conversation. Follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, because likes are our currency.
Oh God, not that again.
I'm just gonna
I can't buy anything with our likes, Tim. It's not. But it is. It's a mattering currency.
It matters to us. Yes.
There you go. It shows that we matter to you. All right, now I'm more online with that. There you go.
And we hope that you can take these mattering ideas and build good mattering projects in your own life so they can help you as you go out this week and find your groove.